Welcome everyone to VBC at Home Live. This is a program of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and this is our McKeesport edition for this Wednesday, June 17th, 2020. I'm Todd DiPastino, and I'm the host of the program and the executive director of the Veterans Breakfast Club. And with me are my compadres here. I have Lauren Del Ritchie, who is our associate director and a Navy veteran. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, Todd. Hi, everyone. How you doing?
Good. We have Sean Hall, who is our director of programming. Hi, Sean. Good to see you. And you are muted. That's okay, because he's a new guy. New guy gets muted. Good to see you. And we have intern over here, Libby DiPastino. Hello, Libby.
Hello.
And we have Ellie, who is our engineer and producer and controller. She is allowing people in from the waiting room. And of course, if you were asked to kind of text or call for verification, it's just because we could not identify who you were. And we don't want to have a problem with Zoom bombers like we had again. And that will be the end of that discussion. All right. Thank you for joining us. We always like to welcome people on the Facebook side and on the Zoom side. I know that people are still kind of joining our conversation. So I will just banter just a little bit about the fact that I got my hair cut yesterday. How about that? It was like going to a party. It was like going out, you know, for the first time. Since March, I went to Vinny's Barbershop in Castle Shannon, where I always go. Very veterans-friendly place. It is the kind of barbershop, okay. And I know Eileen often is watching this program. So hi, Eileen. She cuts my hair. Eileen and Michelle, they're wonderful there. Very veterans-friendly. You walk in and you see it's just a feast for the eyes. There are portraits of veterans through the eras on the walls. There are stuffed squirrels and beavers and a deer head with a mask, a gas mask over it, and a lot of conversation. It's the kind of barbershop that you go to that people who are there who are clearly, visibly need no haircut still go to hang in there, to hang out and talk. And, you know, Eileen is very opinionated, and she gives you strong opinions as she's waving a straight razor in your face. And so obviously the only thing you could do is agree with her. So that was my wonderful barbershop experience yesterday. We're getting a weird noise here. Ellie?
I think it's just the background noise on Jay's computer, but we're all good.
Okay, we're very good. All right. Well, let's get started. We always like to begin with the national anthem, and it doesn't look like we have Lee Corfield here with us today. So let's go with Marianne Mangini to lead us in the national anthem. And I'll share a flag here.
Hi, VBC. My name is Marianne Mangini, and I was totally honored when Katie asked me to open and close your meeting. I'm sorry that everything kind of got turned around with the COVID thing, and I hope you're all doing well and just keeping your hope alive, because it's all going to blow over soon. So here's the Star Spangled Banner. Stripes and bright stars through the
Thank you, Mary Ann. Thank you very much for that. Oh man, that's it. Now we know we're ready to go. Just a few more announcements before we get started with the program. And that is, of course, I want to remind people that we have our VBC coffee hour tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. It's this same Zoom address. Ellie or Libby, I will ask that you put the Zoom address in the chat here on the Zoom side and on the Facebook comment side so that people could join us if they'd like. This is an informal hour and 15 minutes. Veterans and anybody who wants to join us, we get together and talk, and it's always fascinating. There's no real agenda. Clem Blazewick, I know that you're going to be there because I have some wonderful pictures that you sent me recently that I want to share with people. So I hope you're there and we can talk about the pictures. Marshall Gordon would love to have you there. You don't get up that early though, Marshall. No, yeah. Oh, and by the way, you should go to Vinny's barbershop and get your hair cut. You're muted, but I think you get the picture. And I will be down to your place. You live down the street. I'll be down to your place very, very shortly. So I want to let people know that we do have our coffee hour tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then on Monday, we'll be back with our 7 p.m. evening program. And we're doing a special program this Monday, June 22nd.
We may have lost Todd for just a second, but I'm sure he's going to pop back on here.
Doing
There he is.
special edition.
He's a magician.
There he is. Okay, I don't have to pick up where he left off then. He is magical. That's what we call him every day.
I'm magical because I managed to shut down my computer by hitting the wrong button on this keyboard. I've done it like 3 times. So I'm just going to put this keyboard out where it can't do any damage. So I actually shut down my computer, got myself off this program, and I continued to talk though. So where was I? We were having a special program on Monday, June 22nd. And that is at 7 p.m. It's our regularly scheduled time, but this is a special program really in light of the killing of George Floyd on May 25th and the national awakening there's been to Black Lives Matter. We're going to have a special discussion, a conversation, a community conversation about race in the military with perspectives, especially from African-American veterans. I'm curious, I would like to know, and I'd like people to talk about what the experience of race is like in the military as opposed to in the civilian world. And maybe can the civilian world learn anything from how race relations are in the military? I'm very interested and curious, especially to hear from African-American veterans of all eras and ages and every branch of service, even the Marine Corps. So please do join us on Monday night, June 22nd at 7 p.m. But today we're talking about, one more announcement, Sean Hall. We have one more announcement. Sorry, I almost forgot you. We have Truth About War podcast, didn't we? We had one released on Monday.
We did. And sort of in addition to all of the great stuff that VBC is doing to bring veteran stories to everyone, we have a wonderful podcast. It's called Truth About War that's online, on iTunes, on Spotify right now. We're up to episode 8 now, and this week's episode was Frederick Logoval, who's with all due respect to Todd, probably the foremost historian on the American War in Vietnam. He wrote a book, one of his 9 that they talk about, called Embers of War. Which won the Pulitzer Prize in 2013. And if you've never heard a podcast or never had a chance to, we really hope that you'll give this a listen. It's really done with the wonderful quality that you're used to from VBC. I'll put the link to the website in the chat. Pop over there if you have a chance. You'll scroll down, you'll see Frederick's face, and you can just press play and give him a bit of a listen. We have 7 other episodes that are on the website that you can listen to. And they're just really well done, really well edited and produced stories of people that we've been able to speak with over the last year. So we hope that you're able to join us. And also, if you're able to tell your friends about it, that'd be great. Usually we send out in our e-blast a little blurb at the bottom about Truth About War. If you forward that to your friends and say, hey, give this a listen, it's just another thing that VBC is doing to help bring these stories out. So hope to see you there, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sean. You pitched that a lot better than I ever pitched it. Thank you so much. It's absolutely right. People should give it a listen. And Sean, if you could maybe put a link in the chat here on the Zoom side or on the Facebook side so people could, click and instantly get to it. Every episode is really a fascinating conversation with a fascinating veteran or commentator who has a unique perspective on the history of armed service in the U.S. And speaking of which, that's what we're focused about today at VBC at Home Live. This is our McKeesport edition. We're focusing on the military service over the decades that has come from one very important town here in Western Pennsylvania in particular. And I want to explain it a little bit to people because I know we have some viewers and listeners who aren't from Pittsburgh or who are out of the area. McKeesport is a town of about 20,000 people, about 12 miles upriver, up the Monongahela River from Pittsburgh here in Western Pennsylvania, Allegheny County. I'm sharing with you a map of Allegheny County here on the left. You can see McKeesport is circled. It is right at the confluence of the Monongahela River and the Youghiogheny River. It was a place that was presided over by, and our guest Dave Moore may share more information about this, about a remarkable Native American leader, Queen Aliquippa. People from Western Pennsylvania know the name Aliquippa, where there was a Queen Aliquippa, and she was from McKeesport. And it was later then settled by John and David McKee, and it became just a booming, bustling industrial center here in Western Pennsylvania, the home to National Tube, which became a division of United States Steel. And this town that is now 20,000 people at its peak was, Dave said, almost 70,000 people during World War II and after. And it was really because of National Tube and the industry, the manufacturing that was here. And because of that, the jobs that National Tube and other places offered, it was just McKeesport became a mecca for people around the world. I mean, truly, you had, millions of immigrants kind of pouring in from Southern Europe and Eastern Europe in the late 1800s, African Americans coming up in very large numbers through the 20th century from the South to McKeesport. So McKeesport became a very cosmopolitan, multiracial, multinational town, and a really remarkable place. And you could see the nickname was Tube City. There's a picture of National Tube there on the right in its heyday. On the left is this great cartoon that kind of celebrates the role of tubing, steel and iron tubing. I guess it was mainly steel tubing, steel pipes of every variety, pipes that go in cars, pipes that go in houses, pipes that go underground, you name it, McKeesport made it. And it just became a very important industrial center and a social center here in Western PA. And also, one thing that I've found, two things about McKeesport that I've found in working with the Veterans Breakfast Club over the years. Number one, people who are from McKeesport are very proud of their town. There's a great, strong attachment between the kind of residents of McKeesport with each other and its history. There's a great pride in its history. And second, there's an overwhelming commitment to military service from McKeesport. I mean, McKeesporters have joined the military way out of proportion to their numbers. Enormous numbers of McKeesporters joined the Army, for example, during World War II, joined the various branches of service during the Korean War and during the Vietnam War. And to kind of share with us a little bit about why that is, we have Dave Moore here. Hello, Dave. Dave is from the McKeesport Regional Heritage Center, which is a wonderful museum dedicated to the history of McKeesport. Thank you for joining us, Dave.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I noticed, first of all, I just want to compliment you on the wonderful work you've been doing during COVID-19. All these museums have been shut down, and you were really on the forefront of being out there with kind of doing what we do a bit. You have a fireside chat with Dave every week. You've been doing the history of golf in Western Pennsylvania. And you have a program coming up also?
Tonight is actually the last of a 9-part series on the history of golf in Western Pennsylvania. If you can't tell from behind me, I am an avid golfer. I also work for Oakmont Country Club and Allegheny Country Club doing their history. So when we went in the pandemic, we wanted to make sure we were staying interactive with everybody and using social media much more than we had in the past. So they asked me, would you mind talking every week about something? And I said, well, if I can talk about golf for the next few weeks, then we should be, I could talk about that for weeks on end. So it's been a 9-part series that wraps up tonight. Started with the foundations of the local golf courses, the U.S. Opens, U.S. Amateurs, PGAs, women's golf. And tonight we just kind of wrap everything up. And then we'll be starting, we'll continue the fireside chats, but it's going to be different topics, probably week to week going forward, starting in July.
And what's the next topic?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I haven't gotten
I
there
think
yet.
isn't it women's suffrage maybe? Is that it?
Yes, tomorrow night we have something similar to this. It's going to be women's suffrage and the right,
Okay.
100 years of the vote. That's tomorrow
what it
night at 7 p.m. I believe. And then we typically have a summer speaker series. So the third Thursday of every month in the summer, we're going to have some sort of speaker. The lady that's doing the women's suffrage one tomorrow was actually supposed to do it back in March during, the actual 100th anniversary of the vote. But of course, COVID kind of threw that plan out the window. So we're glad she's going to do it tomorrow night. And we're going from there. But fireside chats will continue in July, and we'll have another summer speaker that third week of July. We're still not sure yet. We just reopened about a week ago, so we're still trying to get our feet on the ground and get back to business as usual.
Dave, you're not a native of Western Pennsylvania, I don't believe, although you did go to the University of Pittsburgh, and then you've come back and you're working now at the museum and elsewhere. What, from your perspective, makes McKeesport special?
I think McKeesport, you said it earlier, and I think you said it very well. Everybody that's from here is very proud to be from here. They're very proud of this city. And, if you're an outsider looking in, you hear a lot of bad about McKeesport. You hear about the crime and the violence and things like that. And I think if people came and visited visited us more, not only the center here, but the town itself, you see that it's struggling through a rough time right now, but it's better than the news likes to project it. And I think, as I said, you said it best. Everybody that's from here is very proud to be from here, and and that's always been the case. Everybody that I've interacted with that's from McKeesport, or whether they're still here or they live somewhere else across the globe, they're proud to be from here. And I don't think I could say it any better than that, to be honest with you.
And you bring up something that I should mention to viewers who aren't familiar with McKeesport. It's kind of a melancholy experience driving through town for me, because you could see it was once just a thriving commercial center. I mean, you have, closed department stores and wonderful Main Street there. And, it's a town that has shrunk from 60 or 70,000 people to 20,000 people. It's a town that has gone through deindustrialization very rapidly and devastatingly in the beginning of the 1980s, with National Tube moving out and all the social dysfunction that comes with, the removal of heavy industry from, kind of the economy being cut out from under it. So that is the context of the town today, but people are still very proud of it, of the community and of the history. And one part of the history is this history of military service in McKeesport. It goes way, way back. I mean, really to the beginning of the town. Why do you think McKeesporters have been so eager to join the armed forces?
Well, it actually goes back to before the town. You mentioned Queen Aliquippa in the beginning. The George Washington passed through here on a mission that essentially starts the French and Indian War, and then the American Revolution and so on. But when it comes to McKeesport, I think the thing that has led to there being so many veterans from this area and continued military services, I think it's very much a blue collar town. And when you think about, when you think about Pittsburgh and this whole region, you typically think, the steel mills and blue collar. And I think McKeesport certainly fits into that. The first industries in this town were shipbuilding and ferrying, coal mining. And then once National Tube came in and you had all the steel works, it became the second largest city in Western Pennsylvania at its peak. There was over 70,000 people that called McKeesport home after World War II. And I think the biggest thing is it's a blue collar town. It's a very traditional town. If your grandfather started in the mill, your father probably worked in the mill. and then you probably worked in the mill. And it's probably, and it's very similar when it comes to military service. Your grandfather might have served in World War I, your father might have served in World War II, and then you served in Vietnam, or some sort of time frame like that. We have veterans, and we focus on veterans in our exhibit dating back to the American Revolution, and then really starting in the Civil War. We have a lot of great stories, including the 4 men that carried Lincoln from Ford's Theater. They were all McKeesport soldiers. Then you have World War I with actually, you have the Spanish-American War and the Boxer Rebellion with Franklin Phillips, who was awarded the Medal of Honor under an assumed name. And then World War I. World War II, we have a plethora of individuals that we could talk about. Specifically, one name I throw out there is Glenn Rojan, who's famous for the piggyback flight. And then, Korea. And then once you get to Vietnam, the McKeesport 23 really drive that narrative. The 23 young men that were killed in service over in Vietnam. And if you look at the numbers, I believe I read somewhere that McKeesport was second per capita for deaths in the state of Pennsylvania during the Vietnam War. And, it's hard to believe that, this town was struck so hard by that. And it's so sad to see that, because, it has such a tradition of military, military service. And it's always sad to see, your hometown boys suffer and die in war.
I want to dig a little deeper into the McKeesport 23 from Vietnam. And I want to do that with two of our guests here, who's Don Nemchik. Let me get Don on here first. Don, you've talked about your cousin. Hi, Don, how are you? Let's get you spotlighted. Let's get you unmuted. And where'd you go? Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to unmute you. Unmute you. There we go. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing very well, Dave. Todd, thanks for having us here today. It means a lot to us to get this story out. I know Carl and Jay West are here today, and we just have a lot to say about the McKeesport 23 and how we grew up and how our service is so important to us, and the fact that it's least we forget. We'll always remember those 23 young men and all the others who served as well.
And I've got to say, Don, that here are the 23 faces here on the left. On the right is a cover of a book called "Did You Know That Boy?", which is about the McKeesport 23 by Dale Saller. And you and Carl and so many others are keeping the names of these 23 alive. I guess this is a dumb question to ask, but why? What is it about these 23? What is it about your experience growing up in McKeesport that inspires such devotion?
Well, what inspired so much devotion is the fact that they are our friends, relatives, teammates, classmates, and just about any connection that you can make. And we in Pittsburgh always say there's 6 connections of each other in the Pittsburgh area. Everybody either knows somebody or is related to somebody. I think in McKeesport that's shrunk down to about 3. But the fact is that as a blue-collar town, wherein our fathers served in World War II, we were taught patriotism. We said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag every day. We prayed. And so it was instilled upon us that patriotism is important, as is service. And when Vietnam came, the call to arms was there. This is during the draft. A lot of the young men, myself included, Carl, I believe Jay as well, most of us enlisted. And not to just avoid the draft, it's to serve our country. So given all that, we have an immense amount of pride. These young boys were our classmates. In my case, my relative. In Jay's case, his brother. Okay, Carl knows a lot of these fellas. There's stories that we just go on and on. But the reason we have so much pride and so much commitment to these young men, we always say, what could have been if they came home? Who knows what those boys would have been? My cousin Mike was the young man. He was 18 years old when he was killed. His commitment was going to be back to the boys club upon his return, so he can help young men on a straight and narrow. All the fellows that knew him always tell me, boy, Mike was the kind of guy that, boy, if there was a fight in the ball field, he'd break it up and try to find a better way. He was also the kid that always wanted to carry the flag in ceremonies and in parades. So he had that patriotism instilled upon him. His father served in World War II. Excuse me. So there's a legacy for that. So we're immensely proud of that, and we're going to continue that pride and that homage to them. You know, it's very interesting. We're going through this virus. We had our Memorial Day service at the Boys Club, and it's very important to us. We use the same wreath that was used in 1966 when that memorial was dedicated. And this year, the Memorial Day service was supposed to be for Gold Star families only. Those of us who have lost someone, keep it on the down low so we didn't exceed the crowd limits, et cetera, that were imposed upon us. Well, guess what? There's probably over 50 people that showed up at that ceremony.
Yeah, I heard about that.
We were all
I heard it. And here are portraits of the McKeesport 23, the first being Boots Johnson, up there on the upper left, Norman Johnson, who was killed in 1965. And the final one, Vincent Gauka, who was killed in 1971. 23 in that 6 years killed from McKeesport. Your cousin was Michael Nemchek, and you mentioned the Boys Club. And could you talk a little bit about the importance of the Boys Club and this guy here on the left, Sam La Rosa?
Absolutely. The importance of the Boys Club, you have to remember, we were the heart of the baby boom generation. There's a lot of us. And, you know, we always wanted to play ball, learn how to box, shoot pool. That was a place for us to go. You know, we had the YMCA and we had some other things to go on, but the Boys Club in McKeesport was where you seen all your classmates, your buddies. There's some darn good ball players that came out of there. But sometimes even if you weren't playing ball for one of the teams, you'd go up and watch those fellas play. And it was just a meeting place where all the fellas got a chance to be with each other, and you kind of pushed and shoved a little bit. You learned how to negotiate, how to compromise. But Sam was always there to keep you straight. You knew that Sam was going to be there. It was important to us. I know when my cousin Mike died, Sam received a letter that had not been opened, of course, because he received it. Sam received the letter after Mike's remains were buried, and he never opened that letter. And on the letter, it was, you know, stamped KIA. So there was I believe my cousin Greg has some of those artifacts. We shared some of those artifacts with the McKeesport History Center as well. So what Sam meant to us was, it's very hard to explain. He was so important to the boys. We could look up to him. He knew, you know, we knew that he was there for us. You know, certainly we had fathers and uncles and brothers that were around us as well. But Sam was that guy that, you know, he was a boxer when he was a young man, and he didn't take any BS from anybody either. So Sam meant the world to us, and all the boys wrote to him in addition to their families while they were in the service.
I want to hear from Carl Truss. Hey, Carl, you before you were on here earlier with us, and you just spoke so beautifully and movingly for me about what it was like to return home from war. Carl, you're a Marine. You served in Vietnam. You were a member of the Boys Club. What did Sam La Rosa mean to you?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Diane Richard, host of our Let's Talk with Diane, and also the Veterans Channel hosted by Diane, wanted to be here, but she couldn't because, but she wasn't feeling very well. She was sick, so I wanted to say, she wanted to say hello to everybody, and she really would have been here if she could. But like Don was saying, Sam was the man. I don't understand how he put up with all those kids, all of us, because we was scrapped from the time we got in there till the time he sent us home. And it was always good for at least 2 bloody noses every day. And I don't know how he put up with it, but he would always separate people. You sit over there, you sit over there. Okay, and you just calm down and think about what you did. So then we'd sit there for a while, and he'd come over and says, come here. No, get us all together, and he said, now shake his hand. Now go play. But I had, when I first came home from Vietnam, the very next day, I got a phone call, and it was Sam. And I said, Sam, how did you know I was home? And he called me Truck. I said, Truck, I know everything. I know everything that goes on in McKeesport. So I want you to come over and have lunch with me tomorrow. I said, okay, fine. So I go over and I'm thinking we're going to go to Winkies or Eaton Park or something. And he sits me down at his desk and he hands me a sandwich. He says, eat. And I said, okay. And he said, if you want a pop, you're going to have to buy it for yourself. And I said, okay. So, all right. Okay. So we sat there and he talked about the boys and we were almost in tears talking about guys, Mike and Boots and Jitters and he was telling us how much he loved everybody. And I said, Sam, I understand. He says, I want you to plant the wreath at the ceremony. I said, Sam, I do not feel worthy enough to do that. And he says, no, you're going to do it because the boys want you to do it. And then I said, Sam, I don't feel, no. Not only that, you're going to be Grand Marshal in the parade. I said, geez, what do you mean? He said, yeah. So I rode in an open top car in the parade and we stood at the Kennedy Monument down on Lau Boulevard. I think it's Lau Boulevard. And we went out to the mound where there was this time capsule buried. And I can't remember anything except the day I was thinking about the guys. And I said, man, oh man, I'd give anything to be able to just thank those guys, just anything. But Sam was the guy. He was a disciplinarian, but he loved everybody. And like Don was saying, when the baseball game was played on the field, Sam would be looking out the window around the corner, and he would tell us, you left for second base too soon. What are you talking about? That's it. He didn't miss anything.
He didn't miss a trick. So Sam LaRosa, the head of the boys club in McKeesport, calls you the day after you return home from Vietnam.
Yes.
He makes you the grand marshal of a parade.
Yes.
Did you speak? You gave a speech?
I can't remember a word. He asked everyone to speak when we were at the mound. And I can't remember anything from that day except that, all this hoopla was going on. And Sam said he's pointing things out and wave to so-and-so over there. And he was, oh man, it was fantastic. It was crazy.
Carl,
But I would like to say, I wish that every veteran could have gone home to a place like McKeesport, because you could wear your uniform. People at church invited you to dinner, and you would put your uniform on and go to the high school and walk around, and the kids would all gather around you. And all we talked about in Vietnam was going home, and we wanted to go home to our families and just walk down the street and get a newspaper or a pop or something like that, and not be hassled. But McKeesport was, the welcome was just, it was tremendous. It was tremendous, and I wish everybody could have come home to something like that, because they really loved and honored the veterans. And I had maybe 12 people in my family who were in the different services, including my dad and all of my uncles and brothers and cousins. And, it was just one of those kind of towns. And places like McKeesport just kind of mess everybody together. And I was telling Joe Hoffman the other day, I said, you know people in certain neighborhoods, you might know one or two or three, but in McKeesport, you knew somebody from every street, from Harrison Village all the way out to Eaton Park Village on the senior high school. Eaton Park, you knew somebody on every street. And if you knew that person, then you would know their cousins, and their uncles and everybody. And so it was a place where everybody just kind of gelled together.
I think Dave Moore might be able to confirm this, but I believe that the memorial that Sam LaRosa created at the Boys Club, which is still there, I'm going to share pictures of it that you took, Carl, and you sent to me, that this memorial here was the first Vietnam War memorial in the United States. I think it was dedicated on Veterans Day 1966, I believe, with the names of the first killed. And it's still there today. I don't believe that anybody's ever discovered a memorial that was before this one. And I want to show this picture here, a close-up. You can see that the names are listed, the 11 names of the members of the Boys Club who were killed. So there are 12 others from McKeesport who weren't members. The first name you see up here is Norman W. Johnson, Boots Johnson, killed in 1965. Then you have Michael Nimchak, who's Don's cousin, killed in 66. And then you go down, and the fifth name down here is James E. West, 1966. And we have James's brother, Jay, with us today. And Jay, let's get you on and have you share just a little bit, if you can, memories of your brother. I thank you for doing it. Let me see here. Let me find Jay. Jay, you're here somewhere. Oh, there you are.
I just had to hit the unmute button. That's okay.
Okay, good to see you, Jay. Thank you for joining us.
First off, I want to apologize if you hear any birds or anything, because I'm sitting on the porch with my daughters, because we lost power, so I had to come down here to get a good Wi-Fi signal.
Oh, the birds singing, we hear them, and they're wonderful. And I notice that you're wearing a shirt of the McKeesport 23. You'll notice that Carl and Don are wearing the hats of the McKeesport 23. You're also wearing a Marine. So you're a Marine, retired.
Yes, I went in the Marine Corps in 1971, and I retired in 1993.
Tell me about your brother.
Oh, my brother was he was a good kid, but he was ornery. He was growing up like a lot of kids. He was in a boys club, and I was in a boys club. He was in Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and everything like that. And I did the same routine. He started out. He loved when he was young. He used to do the yo-yo competition down there at Odo's and everything in McKeesport. And he got so good, he actually at one time beat the champion, and they were supposed to give him a sweater, but the guy never came through and gave it to him. And then he used to like to do the model cars. He would take them and he would fabricate panels and everything else and learn how to smooth them out by his own ways and that. And later on, he got in working on real cars, and he loved to tinker, and that's the kind of guy he was. He was hard to say, not hard to say, but he was someone I always looked up to, and I continue to look up to him this day. Same as Greg looks up to his brother Michael, and I look up to all my brothers and sisters that served in the military, and the McKeesport 23 especially.
Jay, how much older
was
your brother? Was he 3 years older or 4 years older than you?
My brother is 6 years older.
6 years older. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
I interrupted you. You were saying you remember.
Well, I was going to say, he's when growing up, he hang out. Nowadays, I guess you'd call it a gang or whatever, but he hung out with all his buddies and everything down at the L&B on Versailles Avenue in McKeesport. And I'm in contact with some of those guys today, and they tell me stories and everything with them about him and that. And but I still remember when we got the telegram for my brother, because when the Marine Corps, when someone from the Marine Corps passed away in Vietnam, they didn't rely on the taxi cab to bring it. They sent the Marines out to deliver the message personally to the family members. And that was that's one of those times in your life that you'll never forget. And my mom wasn't home, my dad, and so what they had to do is she was at the bowling league with McKeesport or St. Pius. So what they did is they went to the church, the rectory, and they got Father Flanagan, and Father Flanagan went down to the bowling alley and gave with the Marines and gave the news and to my mother and that.
Oh,
actually, the Marines were still at the house, but they went down there to get my mother to console her and to bring her home so that the Marines could give the message, because they wouldn't talk to anybody but my mom and dad.
How old were you, Jay?
Okay, say he was 19, so I was 13.
Oh boy.
Yeah, he was born in 1947. I was born in 1953. And, I know it was hard for my parents when I went in 71. Vietnam was not on the heydays it was, but it's still going on. So I know they had that in the back of their minds. that's something, you know, but
Why would you do that to your mother? I'm sorry, Jay. I mean, gosh, that must have absolutely been. I mean, I could see from a younger brother's perspective why,
Yes.
of course, you would want to follow in his footsteps and join the Marine Corps. But your poor mother, and I believe she's pictured here in the green dress.
yes, it is.
She had to kind of live with her younger son going in.
Well, yes, because I still had another brother and sister, and I know it was hard on them, but it was just something I had to do. It's like Dawn and Carl were both saying, it's what people did in McKeesport. You know, you either went to work in a steel mill or you went into service, because you know a lot of people didn't have the money to go, you know, go and further education.
Right.
And even after I was in the Marine Corps for a while, my dad told me it's not going to be here forever. So, but through the grace of God, he kept me out of harm's way all those years I was in the military. So I had someone watching over me.
This is another dumb question, Jay, but how did your parents respond to your brother being killed? I mean, you know, sometimes it breaks parents.
My mother came from the family because my grandmother, her mother was born in Ireland. So she came up with, you know, with the strong Irish, and I never saw my mom shed a tear.
Wow.
And she just,
Wow.
she was probably crying inside, but she wouldn't, her emotions were never showing outside.
Wow.
And my dad was the same way.
Really?
Yes. They just, I don't know, that was probably the wrong thing to do, is hold all the emotions in, but that's what they did.
But that's what they did.
Yes.
What are we looking at? What event is taking place here at this picture?
Oh, that's at the boys club. And it's in the position right there, you see they're doing the wreath laying ceremonies. What they do is they pass it from the director of the boys club and passes it down to all the family members. And the family members would have been Boot Johnson's mom would have put the wreath at the memorial that Sam built. I mean, like everyone was talking about Sam before, I remember when I was at the boys club, he didn't put up with anything. And that's why I think so many good people, you know, the morals that were instilled in us was by Sam.
Amazing. So the woman next to your mother was Boots Johnson's mother?
No. She was probably, if you look at the picture, she was in the, because she would be in the far left. She's probably not in the, the
picture. Okay.
Yeah.
And Don, I'm sorry, Jay, yes?
No. That's fine.
I was gonna ask Don, is it that same wreath that was in the picture that is still being used today?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow,
And that means a lot to us as well, because the dedication ceremony that we had for the memorial that's now at the McKeesport High School courtyard, we used that wreath. Whenever we dedicated that formally 3 years ago at the McKeesport High School, which probably had over 1,000 people in that auditorium.
Wow, Kathy Sylvia just said in the chat, McKeesport has tough folks in its DNA. And I would agree with that.
About right.
And I do want to invite people, if you're on Zoom, you can feel free to raise your hand, ask a question, or put a question in the chat. Or if you're on the Facebook side, put a question on the comments. Hello, Ed, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I just would like to ask, excuse me, any of our McKeesport veteran friends if they remember Walt Yeager, who died 2 Decembers ago. He was very active in the Boy Scouts, McKeesport, and he lost his son.
Yes, I'll let Carl. I know, Carl, you were close with Walt.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell people who Walt Yeager was?
Oh my goodness. When the Walter Hills was coming to McKeesport, I told Diane, I said, this is coming in my backyard. There's no way that this is going to come in my backyard and we not do a story on it. So I started harassing the mayor, and finally he put me in touch with Walt Yeager. And Walt said, okay, you're clear to do whatever you want to, as far as, set up cameras, interviews, and all that. But anyway, so I did, and we put together a documentary called "The Wall That Heals" Part 1 and Part 2, and we donated a copy to the History Center in McKeesport, and they have it on file there. But anyway, it was in November 17th, that I would talk to Walt on the phone, and he apologized for not getting in touch with me sooner, so that we could have gotten more video together prior to the wall coming to McKeesport. And he was telling him about how the Vietnam 1945 to 1975 was coming to the History Heinz Center. And he was going to put me in touch with the guys. We were going to do stories. We were going to get Rocky Blauer involved. And this was over the phone on the 17th of November of that year. And he was telling me all these things that we're going to do. And I said, okay, next week we will get together with you. And we'll sit down on that Monday and we'll talk about doing all these different things. Well, he died on the 21st. And that just shocked me to my shoes. I was working a Penguins game. And normally I don't answer my phone, but my phone just kept buzzing. And I looked, and the message said, "I'm sorry to inform you that Walt Yeager has died." I could not believe that. I could not believe that. And so that's one reason why Diane and I pushed so hard to get stories for our Veterans Channel. And how and Ed, we sat down, we talked for a few minutes at one of the functions that we were at, and we just go all out to get veteran stories and to promote them and get everything that we can going for them.
You sure do.
And I for the McKeesport 23. That's in my blood.
You know, I put, thank you for talking about your channel, your Veterans channel on YouTube. You and Diane Richards have a wonderful series of videos on YouTube. People should know that you're a filmmaker, a videographer, and you and Diane have a wonderful series on veterans, interviewing veterans. You have a tribute to Walt on YouTube. I put a link to your channel here on the Zoom side. If Ellie or Libby could also take that link and put it on the Facebook side so people could access it there, that would be wonderful, because Carl and I, we have something in common, and that is we love to track down veterans and corner them and get them to share their stories. You've been one of the most resistant of all veterans, Carl, I have to tell you. I keep asking you your story, and you said, no, I don't want to tell my story. Let's talk about this other veteran. But I just want to ask you quickly, I think I have an idea why Jay joined the Marine Corps because of his brother. Why did you join the Marine Corps, and when?
I tried to join the Marine Corps a year early. My junior year in high school, I went down to the recruiter's office, and I tried to join, and he says, "Oh, okay, son." He said, "All right, I'm going to take your picture." So he took my picture, and he says, "All right, I don't believe you're old enough to join." And he said, "But we have your picture, okay? And this picture is going to go all through our system, okay? And if you go somewhere else and join, okay, that picture is going to come back to me. And not only will you be in the Marine Corps, but you'll be in jail." So I said, I better get him a diploma. So I went back to school and I got my diploma. But I went into the Marine Corps to be different. I always dug, as a kid, I dug the Marines, okay? I just loved their story, loved the uniform, everything about them. So my dad was Army. Everybody else in my family was Army, and here I come being a Marine. And they just, but whenever me and my brother were in uniform together, I got all the attention.
That's right, because you had the better.
So Ed, that's my Walt Yeager story, and I always remember him. Every day I will remember him. And we did a story, a tribute to him, and we'll always remember what he did.
Yes, and once again, you could watch the tribute if you click the link in the chat here on the Zoom side, and I think it's on the Facebook comment side also. That'll take you to Carl's YouTube channel, and you could watch that tribute to Walt Yeager, which is absolutely wonderful. I want to get Bob Brown here. I know Bob Brown. Bob, You are a McKeesporter. Here you go. I'm going to spotlight you. Oh, here we go. Let's get your audio working. Unmute. I think you have to accept unmute there, Bob. There you go. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
You're a McKeesporter?
Yes, I am. Born and raised.
And you and I were corresponding back and forth about Ann Street in McKeesport, which I believe is in the lower 10th ward.
Yes, it's AKA West Side.
West side of McKeesport.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly a veteran, a World War II veteran. Some of you may know him. He's a McKeesporter named Walter Patton, World War II Army Air Corps veteran. I remember him coming to our events and talking about, you know, what it was like to grow up in McKeesport, to join in his case, the Army Air Corps during World War II. And he talked a lot about Ann Street. And he said there were 10 families on Ann Street, 10. And they sent 24 young men into the military in World War II. 10 families sent 24. And way back when the Sun Telegraph, the Pittsburgh Sun Telegraph, which was one of the major newspapers, did a story on it. And it's right here. I'm going to share it. One Street's Proud Record. And it goes through the 24 young men on Ann Street. You're familiar with some of these young men or their stories, Bob?
Well, you know, I told you about the virtual cemetery I was creating.
Yes.
And through Find a Grave website. So during the creation of that cemetery, I got to be familiar with some of these folks. And I was also familiar with, the Patton story about Ann Street, but I sort of forgotten about it. Anyway, when I was doing my virtual cemetery, I was trying to get as much information as I could about each of the guys. And then when you start talking about Ann Street again, that's when I started searching. Of course, I'm really into genealogy, and I'm a subscriber to newspapers.com. So I just started digging around newspapers. And in fact, I just discovered this article here. And maybe a week ago. And I'm thinking the Patton gentleman must have read this article. Do you think, Todd? Because
well, he did, yeah. And I made a mistake. This isn't the Sun Telegraph. This is the Pittsburgh Press.
Yes.
And then the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette ran an article probably 10 or 11 years ago on Ann Street in World War II. And I know Walt Patton was interviewed for that. And you also sent this wonderful shot here of Ann Street then and now. There's Ann Street at the top during World War II. At the bottom, that's what it looks like today. And you can see some of the foliage is gone, but that church steeple is still there, and some of the buildings are still there.
That grocery store there at Zozak's, that was just, and I think there was a grocery store on the then picture. And that just closed like a few years, within the last 5 years. So you had a small grocery store there in that area, very self-contained. It was a wonderful area. Would have been a wonderful area to grow up.
Wonderful area to grow up. That's what Walt said. And here is John Zozak. He was the family that owned that grocery store.
And his son, went down through the family, and then they finally went out of business a few years ago. And there's my uncle.
And who is he? Charles Dudash.
He was my uncle, and he grew up on Grover Avenue in McKeesport. He graduated from high school in like 1930, 31, 32. He stayed at home. My mother was younger than him, and the two of them were at home as adults. So 1940, he just decides that he wants to do something more exciting with his life. So he joined the Army in 1940, and he went through aeronautical school for repair of planes, and he graduated at the top of his class, and they really didn't want him to they didn't want him to fly because he had done so well in school, but he said, I want to fly, and I want to fly. And he just bugged him, and then so they decided to allow him to do that. And of course, he became a crew chief because they have to know the total operation of the plane inside and out. Correct, Todd? So they,
Yes.
yeah,
The crew chief has to be able to pretty much do every job on the plane.
every job, yes. And that's what, so, of course, with his skill level, he would be a crew chief. And then he was, he got deployed. So, he joined in 1940. So that initial deployment to, and that's his, by the way, that's his actual plane in flight.
On a mission.
Because we looked at the numbers on the tail section, and we matched them up against the the documentation. So there's a website for the 301st Bomb Group, which is very good, by the way. You want to check that out, Todd.
Yeah.
And so we checked out those numbers on the tail section with what they had on the website, and it was like, that's the plane. And then those are, it's tough to see, but the Maverick is isn't it a calf that gets loose from the herd? And
Right.
they call that a Maverick. So I think they have the nose art is a cow. Some of them had like, scantily clad women on me.
Right. They have a cow.
Yeah, but they had a cow. So anyway, and wait, I'll tell you where I think this photo was, when this photo was taken. So anyway, they get deployed and they have to fly their B-17s over to England from the States, and they get there in August of 1942. And so there had been no action, no battle or combat operations yet in Europe. So I guess in the September of 1942, they decided they're going to do bombing runs over occupied France. And the 301st Bomb Group was designated to do that. I'm not sure if there were any other groups. So, and it was a big deal because as far as we can tell, there was no one from McKeesport, no servicemen that had been in any kind of combat operation. I mean, it was just beginning, and I don't think there was any other servicemen from McKeesport besides my uncle that participated in this. And there were several articles in the McKeesport Daily News that mentioned my uncle and said that, he was flying these daylight raids over France, and they were bombing factories and like ball bearing factories, I guess, and submarine pens. But it was like, I read later that, I read the history, and they said this was just like, they didn't expect any kind of strategical benefit from this. This was just sort of like getting the planes up in the air and seeing what they could do and
get in the action, harass the enemy.
Yeah.
He ended up being shot down, right? In North
That's
Africa.
what I wanted. Yeah. So then that's what I wanted to tell you. So then I guess, so the initial like on ground combat operation, they decided was going to be in North Africa, correct? So, they needed air support, Operation Torch. So they needed air support. So they were going to get these, instead of having these B-17s flying these raids over occupied France, they were going to move them down to Africa, because they're about to, start the Operation Torch. So they flew from England, and I guess it was a circuitous route because, they had to make sure they weren't flying over any kind of occupied territory. They had to go around the Iberian Peninsula, like take a big swing around that because, that was an area where they could get in trouble if they flew over that airspace. So they get down to Africa and they start running missions. A lot of them were over Bizerti. Is that the name? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like the primary port in that area where the Nazis were getting their supplies. So they started doing bombing runs over Bizerti, and he got there at the end of this November. And by the way, I think that photograph was taken in flight from when that's the only time they would have had a chance, they wouldn't be in combat or anything, where they could sit and like take pictures of the planes from the flight from England down to Africa.
Right.
So I think that's when that photograph was taken. So he has. So I guess I gave you the information about the. Here's the other thing. His wife wasn't real. She would always say like, "Oh, Charlie, you tell these stories all the time, and the boys or the guys are going to be so bored with your stories." And I was never. I mean, I was like, "Please, Aunt Helen," and I love my Aunt Helen, but I said, "Please,
tell me the stories."
Yeah,
right.
And I never got tired of hearing it and then he'd add like some little thing to the. He'd add some little wrinkle to the story. That,
a little wrinkle, a little bit more detail. Absolutely, I know it. Yeah, I know it. Absolutely, Bob. I want to interrupt because Don, you mentioned in the chat that you knew some of the families on Ann Street.
Oh yes, having grown up on Ann Street, I knew many of the families. Some of them had children, of course, that were my age, and Zozak's Market on the corner was almost the centerpiece of 10th Ward. That's where that was our giant eagle, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, we lived right across the street from there, and we never went and got a big order like they do today. My mother would send me over for a quarter stick of butter, a half a pound of lunch meat, and a quart of milk, and we're done. And you could put everything on the tab, and the Zozaks knew your name, they knew your family, they would write everything up, and then your dad on payday would come up and square up the bill. But what was interesting is young men are, back in those days, we were somewhat ornery. So I'd always want to go in there and say, I'm going to get a pack of Pall Malls. Well, I said, you give me a pack of Pall Malls, Mrs. Zozak. She says, your dad doesn't smoke Pall Malls. So you couldn't get away with too much over there. However, those families living on Ann Street, many of them, their names I can clearly remember, Zavorchiks and Bailogs, and just the ethnic names rung very, very true. We had a soldier, his last name was Davidovich, and his brother was badly wounded. And back then, although the VA took care of people, his brother stayed at home and was taken care of by his elderly immigrant mother. I can see her, a very small woman, and his brother Pete. So I knew many of the families from 10th Ward, having grown up there. And of course, their children were my classmates and friends as well.
Wow. Marshall Gordon, I see Marshall's here, and I know that you knew Sam LaRosa kind of on a professional level. You were, involved in social work, and you knew Sam when he was the head of the boys club in McKeesport, correct?
Correct. I worked for a planning agency, which was part of the United Way. And at that time, McKeesporters will enjoy this story. At that time, there were 7 boys clubs in Western Pennsylvania. They were in places like McKees Rocks and Duquesne and Shady Side and all over town. And United Way came to me as their planner and said, there's no reason for there to be 7 boys clubs in Western Pennsylvania. You ought to try to bring them together and have one boys club so we don't have to listen to 7 stories, all asking for money and all asking for special privileges. So I got together with a fellow by the name of Mike Murray. Somebody may remember that name. Mike worked for the Boys Club of America, and the two of us worked with all 7 boys clubs to try to bring them together. Took about 5 years, but we formed one boys club of Western Pennsylvania. One holdout didn't join. Can you guess which one that was? Sam LaRosa said, McKeesport is unique. We're not like any other boys club. In McKeesport, every boy is a member of my club, whether they pay their dues, carry a membership card or not. I'm not joining any organization that's going to make rules for McKeesport.
Wow.
So we wound up with one boys club of Western Pennsylvania and the McKeesport Boys Club coming to the United Way for money. And Sam always got his share. Sam was a fighter for every boy in McKeesport. And he said, nobody's going to tell me how to run my boys club. The only change he made was later on he admitted girls and it became the Boys and Girls Club of McKeesport. But it always remained McKeesport. And he said, there's no place in the world like McKeesport. So,
Oh, wonderful.
Sam LaRose, and I'm sure you all remember him that way.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Marshall. I believe we have Ken Kazak with us. Ken, are you here? I'm inviting you to unmute yourself. I can't see you, but I think we could hear you. Maybe. There you are.
Am I on?
Hey, Ken. How are you?
How are you today?
Good, good, good. I'm doing well. I'm going to share my screen here, and I want you to talk about this guy, and I want Dave Moore to chime in also about Franklin J. Phillips. It's a wonderful story, Medal of Honor recipient. The Battle of Peking, it was called. He killed in the Battle of Peking in 1900 during the Boxer Rebellion. He was a Marine. What do you know about his story?
So there's a little family connection here. My uncle used to work for KDKA, and in the late 80s, he came across this story and wrote an editorial. He wanted the station to get involved in having the Medal of Honor issued in the proper name. And the quick backstory, Franklin J. Phillips went into the Army, developed malaria, didn't like the way he was being treated, went AWOL, joined, after he got better, he joined the Marines under a fake name, Harry Fisher. And he died July 16, 1900 at the Boxer Rebellion. And from what I read, his mom lived on Brick Alley in McKeesport. I don't know where that is, but I'm sure the McKeesport crew does. But he became the first Marine to receive the Medal of Honor posthumously, but they gave it in his fake name, Harry Fisher. And I assume his mom said, look, my boy's dead. Can you just issue the Medal of Honor in his proper name? And they didn't do it. At some point, probably in the 70s or 80s, the Navy actually commissioned a ship. It was called MV, I think a Marine vessel, Harry Fisher. And there's a gentleman, I think his name was Wes Slusher, if I'm not mistaken. He contacted some congressmen and they contacted the Marines. I believe it's 1988 or so that the Marines finally reissued the Medal of Honor in the proper name. And by that point in time, everybody connected to Franklin Phillips was deceased, and the Medal of Honor is in the Historical Society.
Yes, yes, yeah. The way you told that story was exactly how I remember it. That his mother said, could you please change his name on this Medal of Honor? His name is Franklin J. Phillips. He just entered the Marine Corps under a phony name. And you know, the Marines, I mean, the Marines said, like, we issued him a name and that's his name, Harry Fisher. So it did take until 1988 for his name to be changed. Dave, you have the Medal of Honor there at the Regional History Center, huh?
Correct. Yeah, we are, I think, one of 3 places in Western Pennsylvania that has a Medal of Honor on display. Soldiers and Sailors, obviously, they have, I think, 6 or 7 on display at this point. And then I believe the Somerset Courthouse has one too. But yeah, we have, it's not Franklin's actual Medal of Honor, but it is a Congress awarded replica of it. So in our military exhibit, it's one of the cornerstone pieces, and we tell his story. And we also tell the story of Mitchell Page, who was awarded the Medal of Honor on Guadalcanal. So it's perfect because they were both in the Marine Corps. So we had the perfect medal to display for both of them. But yeah, we tell Franklin's story, the whole deal. The only thing I could add to what Ken said was the research we did. We believe that he is the last American to be killed during the Boxer Rebellion.
Oh, wow.
We think, but we're not positive on that. But we've read that at a couple different places when we were doing the research and the writing for his panels here at the center. So yeah, just an absolutely fascinating story, and one that really doesn't get told very often, I don't think. It's definitely one of our more prominent stories in our exhibit.
you mentioned Mitchell Page. Could you tell people who Mitchell Page was, just in case they don't know?
So Mitchell Page was born in the area. He graduated from McKeesport High School, and he joined the Marines in the late 1930s. And he was one of several Marines to be awarded the Medal of Honor on Guadalcanal. A very similar story to, if you've ever seen the Pacific, to John Basilone. He basically held off an entire Japanese assault by himself, with jumping from, machine gun to rifle to machine gun that he could. And he's one of only a handful of guys that have a GI Joe made in his likeness. So we actually have one of those GI Joes on display, and his memoirs on display here at the center in that case with the Medal of Honor. I think Homestead and West Mifflin can claim a better claim to him as he grew up there more, but we do have the claim that he graduated from McKeesport High School. So we're the regional Mon Valley Museum, we're making sure we throw his story out there for people to know it.
Yes, that word regional is really important. You cover a lot of the Mon Valley by being the McKeesport Regional Heritage Center. So you do. Mon Valley has such a rich, wonderful history. If I had my act together, I would have invited John McLaughlin to be on this program. John McLaughlin was, some of you may remember him. He was the acting director of the CIA after George Tenet resigned, I believe.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. And he's an Army veteran, a Vietnam veteran. Carl, yes.
You have Joe Hoffman on there, and he has a lot of information about the McKeesport 23.
Oh, good.
And I don't know whether you can unmute him or.
I can. I'll try. Hey, Carl. Hey, Joe. Carl just called you out. I know you're trying to be incognito. We can't even see your face there, but I see you have a Navy hat on. How are you? Oh, let's try and get him unmuted, shall we? Oh, we can't hear you, Joe. Oh, darn it. You are unmuted, but the microphone must not be working. We're going to have to get you another time, Joe. Carl told on you, so. Now, Carl, were you the one who was laughing when Ken said Brick Alley?
Yes.
Why?
I'm not going to tell you why.
Okay, I get it.
I'm not going to tell you why.
I'll tell you why.
You'll tell him, then he'll blame it on me.
I'll tell you why. That's like
no, shut up.
It's not the famous. It's
they had a junkyard down there.
The most infamous area. It's hospitals there now. It sort of took over that area. But it was sort of the rite of passage for every young man that came through McKeesport, rite of passage.
Now, you remember he said that, not me.
And,
Don Nemchek beat you to it in the chat. He said it was the red light district of McKeesport.
Yes.
Oh, man.
I am so, we're going to have to donate.
There's a book written about it as well.
There's a book. There is a book. Yeah.
David Checco, I think, is the author.
And this program also makes me think of John Herr, Hoer. He wrote "And the Wolf Finally Came," which is a wonderful book about the fall of the industry, and with special focus on Western Pennsylvania. John was a McKeesporter. I was lucky enough to have known him in the last few years of his life as he was working on a novel, a memoir of growing up in McKeesport. His father, I think, owned a hotel there. He wrote also, if you're interested in a novel about McKeesport during World War II, he wrote a novel. He was a wonderful writer. He was a reporter by trade for the McKeesport newspaper. He wrote a novel called Monongahela Dusk that I think captures the kind of the rhythm and the tenor of this remarkable city during World War II, Monongahela Dusk. And he passed away suddenly a few years ago. Never got to finish his memoir, but he would have been a great addition, I think, to this program. So many wonderful characters from McKeesport. Ken, one thing that we didn't cover is Ken Kazak is, and Dave, you could chime in here, is this remarkable factoid. And I want everybody anybody who's listening to remember this fact about McKeesport. When Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, when he was shot in the head at Ford's Theater on April 14th, 1865, he was alive but unconscious. He was carried out across the street to a boarding house by 4 soldiers, and those 4 soldiers were all from McKeesport. Is that correct?
Todd, I think the way it went is 3 from McKeesport, 1 from North Versailles, and one of them, William Sample, is buried in the McKeesport Versailles Cemetery.
How about that? Yeah, they all had served in the Union Army with Pennsylvania infantry regiments, and all happened to be at, I believe, at Ford's Theater, right? At the Our American Cousin performance. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It was Jacob Souls, William Sample, Jacob Griffiths, and the 4th name is escaping me at the moment. But they were partaking in the play at Ford's Theater. I think they were 2 or 3 boxes over from the president when he was shot, and then the 4 of them, along with the doctor, carried him across the street. And there's a painting that hangs in the National Gallery that depicts the scene outside of Ford's Theater that night, and you can see the 4 soldiers carrying Lincoln across the street, and just the absolute bedlam that's happening outside. I think it's let me take a look. I think it's born by something hands, I think it's called.
I'm sharing the PittsburghMagazine.com. Pittsburgh Magazine's website did a story on this in 2018. Rick Seaback did a story on this in 2018, the 4 soldiers from McKeesport who carried Lincoln at the end. And I believe, from what I remember reading this article, it was in 1931 that a McKeesporter, I think, maybe a reporter, maybe a Pittsburgh reporter, kind of stumbled across the story that the 4 men who carried Lincoln were McKeesporters, and looked them up and tried to find them, and found that they were all deceased but one. He was able to find one surviving soldier, veteran, Civil War veteran who had borne Lincoln. Did a story on him. I think that's it.
Yeah, I believe so too. And the painting I'm talking about is called "Born by Loving Hands." It was done by Carl Birch. And if you can Google it, it'll pop up. It's one of the first ones to pop up, and you can see there's 2 big, beautiful American flags that are the highlight right in the middle. And if you look to the left of the one dead center, you can see Lincoln being carried out by the soldiers. It's a really cool piece. Like I said, I believe it's the original is at the National Gallery down in Washington.
How interesting. Dave, I tell you, I'll be very happy to sell you the recording of this Zoom conversation. No, seriously, you should. I hope that we'll share this on the McKeesport Heritage Center's Facebook page. This is we have a lot of history here. Just in
Yes,
this,
we do.
In the past, not even an hour and a half. Does anybody else have a question for?
Hey, Todd.
Yes.
Todd, I do.
Okay.
I was wondering, President Kennedy visited. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. President Kennedy visited McKeesport. I think it was just prior to his demise. Did anybody who are on this on Zoom today, were they present for his speech in McKeesport?
Dave, I know you know a lot about that, don't you?
I know a whole lot about President Kennedy. So Kennedy was actually here twice. The first time was in 1947. Him and Richard Nixon were both freshman congressmen, and they debated the Taft-Hartley Act at the Penn McKee Hotel, which was a labor dispute act immediately following World War II. And then Kennedy returned in 1962 to campaign for Democrats in the midterm elections, and he was here. I believe the date is October 13th, and 3 days later was when the Cuban Missile Crisis started. So there's a lot of, we can't prove it. We're trying our best to find a way to prove it, but we do believe that Kennedy was first informed of the photos of the U-2 spy planes over Cuba while he was still here in McKeesport that day, and then returned to Washington. Because the story that we've heard from a couple different sources is he was supposed to stay a little bit longer and had to rush out that day. And we think that, we're just trying to put two and two together, but we think that's why.
Is
But
that interesting?
we're still working to try to nail that down for sure. But that's something that we do believe, and we don't necessarily push, but if we're asked, that's the story we like to tell.
That is a neat story. Don,
Yes.
do you have evidence?
Yes, I do. The Kennedy-Nixon debate was very interesting because both of them were former naval officers of World War II. Of course, Kennedy at PT 109, and Nixon was a supply officer who served in the Pacific. Well, when they came to McKeesport, they took the train, the Capital Limited, that came directly from DC to McKeesport. They got off the train, they walked down to the hotel with some dignitaries, did their speech, and then went to the Star Restaurant, which was near the train station, to catch the midnight train back to DC. They flipped a coin once they determined their berthing, who's going to sleep in the top bunk. And the book Capital Limited tells a lot of detail about this. That's why I can speak to it. But what's interesting, they talked about baseball back in the day. So that said, they were two young legislators on the rise, of course, and their story is very, very interesting. And anyone who's interested in that McKeesport history about what went on down at the Penn McKee gets a hold of that book, The Capital Limited. I'm sorry that I had it and I gave it to my cousin actually, and I don't know the author. If you could do a Google search, it was available on Amazon, and it details that story. I was at Kennedy's speech in 1962.
You were there?
Yes, sir, I was. I was a young man. I was about 12 years old, and I was standing on the bridge coming from McKeesport to 10th Ward. After the ceremonies, I just started walking home, and here comes his motorcade. Now, he had the convertible. It's my understanding, he rode in the same convertible that he was assassinated in the following year. And I recall vividly, I'm standing there, I'm waving, and he kind of glances over at you, and he had that blue Brooks Brothers suit, sharp white shirt, that hair that he brushes aside, and he just drove on. I believe he was further going on to Glassfork after his stay in McKeesport. So there's a lot of information out there that's about those two visits. And of course, Kennedy, this being the Democratic stronghold that it was, he was here to lobby for a congressman. And boy, I can't remember the name right now. But that said, that was one of the days where everybody remembers in McKeesport, Sam's Hot Dogs. Well, Sam's Hot Dogs was reported to have sold out over 1,000 hot dogs that day because of the throng of people that was there to see the beloved John F. Kennedy.
And it was kind of like the peak of Kennedy's popularity.
Oh, yes. It was 1962. Oh, yeah. And it was the peak. Sure. And in McKeesport, as a Democrat and the President of the United States, an Irish Catholic,
right?
He was a fair-haired boy, if you will.
Right. For an ethnic town like McKeesport. And I should ask you, Don, then. I think I taught college. I taught a course on the Vietnam War, and one of the things that I like to teach was John F. Kennedy's inaugural address, which was really like an inspirational call to arms for the Cold War. And young men and women were very much inspired by him. You seeing him as a 12-year-old, you ended up joining the Navy. How did you choose the Navy?
Well, I chose the Navy for a couple of reasons. One, back in 1968, and if you can envision that time, some of us old timers, we were in high school. Well, they called in all boys assembly. Well, 1968, if you could see the Vietnam Wall at the apex, lost 15,000 men, the highest KIA number during the Vietnam War. Well, they were looking for men. They were looking for boys to enlist. And the Marine Corps and the Navy came to an all-boys assembly, and they stood in uniform and told us, look, if you think you're going to go into that mill and escape what's going on in Southeast Asia, you got another thing coming. Why don't you enlist now? We'll get you trained. We'll get you over there quicker, hopefully come back quicker too. And that was my choice to select the Navy. Seemed a little bit more appealing to me at that time. I don't know if the Marine Corps would have been a good fit for me. Although, we're all from McKeesport, we thought we were pretty tough kids and everything like that. But I just knew what they were going through during that very, very Tet Offensive and at that time. So when I ended up in Vietnam, I was a radioman, RTO, and worked at a communication station in Cam Bay, and later in some other stations in Southeast Asia, then later on board the USS Constellation, an attack aircraft carrier.
Oh, how interesting. Boy, I would love to hear more about your service sometime, Don. Cameron Bay, what that was like. I've seen pictures. Bob, yes.
I have a story about, I attended a Lincoln Forum in Gettysburg a couple of years ago, and Michael Beschloss was the keynote speaker, and he was doing a book signing, and I had Bob Brown, McKeesport, Pennsylvania, and he signed my book, and then he's looking straight into my chest, and he says, "You're from McKeesport," and I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you know that's where the first Kennedy presidential historian?" He goes, "You know that's the location of the first Nixon-Kennedy debate." And I said, "Oh yeah, of course. I'm from McKeesport. We have to know that." And then he said, "My uncle worked for Fort Pitt Casting, which is a plant we're all familiar with. It's in McKeesport." And he said, apparently he spent time in McKeesport. And I said, "Well, what'd you think?" He says, "I have very fond memories."
Oh, how neat. And for those who don't know Michael Beschloss, he's a very well-known kind of celebrity historian who's on the news all the time. He's an excellent commentator and excellent writer. I'm jealous of his success. He's very, very good. That is so interesting that he has a McKeesport connection.
Yes.
I was going to say, if he knew that the forebearers of Lincoln was from McKeesport, I'd just throw up my hands and just say, "Oh my gosh, that guy knows everything." If he knows that fact. This hour and a half went so quickly. Thank you all for coming on the program to focus on McKeesport. I want to have you all on again. Dave, anytime, you're welcome anytime to join us if you'd like. Let us know, keep us up to date of what's going on at your wonderful museum. Don and Carl, you guys should be like ambassadors for McKeesport. Same with you, Bob. Boy, you sold us on that town. Thank you very much, Ken. Joe, next time hopefully would get you and your story. Get your microphone working. Thank you all for joining us. And I hope, again, that you'll think about joining us tomorrow morning for our coffee hour at 9 a.m. This same Zoom channel. We'll be here for, just for an hour of conversation. And then also join us Monday night for our special kind of community conversation, Race in the Military, Perspectives from African-American Veterans. We'd love everyone to join us, to listen, to share. Please do kind of tune in on Monday night. So if anybody doesn't have anything else to announce, or let people know about Carl, yes.
Joe Hoffman just texted me, and he wanted Dawn if he could give a brief description of how the 23 came about with the monument and the not the graduation, the what is it called? Reunion.
The reunion.
How that became. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Great. Thank you, Joe. Don, why don't you talk about the monument, and I'll share a picture of it.
Okay, the McKeesport 23 came about as a result of the high school reunion for the class of '65. Joe Hoffman was a classmate and developed a poster of the three fellows, Boots Johnson, my cousin Michael, and another, the name just escaped me, I apologize, but the three fellows that were the classmates. And so a groundswell of, pride and more information came about to where we had a memorial for the McKeesport 23. There's the picture of it at the McKeesport High School courtyard. Well, we determined that we had a dedication ceremony. We brought families in and gave them the ability to speak about their loved one. And it was probably one of the most, for me, it was probably one of the most heartfelt things that I've ever done that I will never forget. But everyone in that audience was there, and that was standing room only. They were out into the hallways. Everyone was there to honor these boys and to find out more about the McKeesport 23. We just continued on. We have our ceremonies, the book McKeesport 23, Did You Know That Boy was written. Ironically, the title of that book, Did You Know That Boy, was a result of Joe's mother, I believe, wrote to him while he was in basic training at RT Recruit Training Command, Great Lakes. And she said, "Did you know that boy? That was my cousin Mike when he was killed." As you're seeing, you're flashing by, we have T-shirts and other, there's Joe Hoffman there with the memorial. Joe's a Navy veteran. He was a gunner's mate in the Navy. And ironically, prior to that, he was working at the Christie Park Bomb Works, where Christie Park's near McKeesport area, and a lot of the fellows went there in the mill. Joe was a gunner's mate, loading some of those bombs into the breeches after he got into the gun line in Vietnam. Joe's a proud sailor who served on board USS Frank Evans, which is a whole story within itself. However, as far as the McKeesport 23 goes, the interest in that is just still overwhelming. The book is in its second printing, I believe. We're getting some extra copies made. It's available at the McKeesport Heritage Center for those to read, and at the Carnegie Library System once that gets opened up. People often ask us, why did you have it into the McKeesport High School courtyard? Why don't you have it at Renzi Park or outside where people can see it? Well, as we know today, unfortunate circumstances as people try to deface property and landmarks and things like that, Joe was very adamant about keeping that pristine and keeping it at the McKeesport High School courtyard. So when we have our ceremonies on Veterans Day and some other ceremonies, the high school will open it up to the public. But we veterans ourselves in McKeesport raised the money for that. We didn't have raffles. We didn't put our arm onto politicians and ask them for money. The veterans of McKeesport, most of them Vietnam veterans, we raised over $6,500 to get that memorial erected. So Joe and others were instrumental in getting this memorial, and this is something we are extremely proud of. And I encourage anyone they can get a hold of that book, Did You Know That Boy? And the author is Dale Staller. And Dale did a great job of nailing down each of those 23 boys' lives and their deaths as well. And we were very, very careful on who we selected as the McKeesport 23. We went into the Department of Defense official records because there are others in the general area. McKeesport has a broad brush, Portview, Liberty, Duquesne, Elizabeth Township. There's a whole bunch of little boroughs there that guys said, hey, how come this fellow wasn't included? So the research on that was extensive, and we were very focused on attention to detail. But I encourage anyone who's interested in this conversation, they're welcome to call me. I'll be happy to tell them more stories and some more information. They can email me or give me a call. If you will, I'll just leave my number out. It's 412-461-7172. I'll be happy to call them. There's some radio shows that we did. Joe Hoffman and I have teamed up very well together. When we did the dedication at the McKeesport History Center, when all this started to break out, we had another standing room only crowd, and just hearing the families speak about their loved ones. We have one of the McKeesport 23 was a Czechoslovakian immigrant. His name was Tibor Sotak. Grew up in 10th Ward. And he came when his family immigrated from Czechoslovakia. That's where they came, and they rented from Zozak's, who owns Zozak's Market. So Tibor was one of those kids. It was funny. Just a quick story. Tibor was a big kid, strong kid, and he was having a little bit of a hard time fitting in to the rest of us. So he would bring it every morning. We'd all gather around the corner and see what we're going to do that day in the summer. He'd bring his baseball glove and then his cap pistol rig on his hip. He says, I don't know what you boys play today, but I'm ready. So he was something else. And Joe was able to, we've said one picture of him was a high school picture with a shirt on, collared shirt, and wasn't in uniform. Well, his sister Eva was able to provide us with a lot of good information for his banner and for the banner at the McKeesport History Center as well. But the stories are just, they go on and on. And if you speak to anyone who's from that era, Joe Hoffman, myself, Jay West, Carl, all the fellows, we got stories that some of them will make you laugh and some of them will make you cry. But it just gives a very good picture of how growing up in a hard scrabble steel town ended up with all of this in front of us, talking about 23 boys who gave their life for this country. And their families are still here. And, you know, it's interesting when we have our ceremonies at the Boys Club. Oftentimes you get the mayor, the state senator, legislatures, etc. They always say, you know, we go to other events in other areas of this region, and always the attendance seems to be going down. When you come to the one in McKeesport, and it's located in a real hard area, okay, it's seen much better days, our attendance keeps going up because everyone will say, you know, I want to be part of that. I remember this fellow from high school, or I remember someone who's related to him, and they come to this ceremony, faithfully. And we have over 50 people at some time, and considering the situation we're in with the virus, we had over 50 people for this Memorial Day service, and it was very heartfelt. Interesting, we have a chaplain from the Boys Club, Boys Town, Aubrey Boys and Girls Town now, and he's an interesting guy, very, very well-spoken man. I believe he's from Nigeria or Somalia, one of the two African countries. And he says, you know, in our culture, when we say someone's name, they have not passed. He says, you people here in McKeesport, he says, this is a beautiful thing. Your family members, your teammates, your friends, they haven't passed. You talk about them every day. And it's almost that way. When we get together for a breakfast, or fellas get together for a couple adult beverages or something, right away we start talking about back in the day at the Boys Club, watching Gerald Grayson hit a home run, or watching Ernie Oatmeal run. He was one of the fastest fellas in McKeesport. They're just names just keep going on and on. And it's just something we enjoy sharing. I know I do. I know Joe does as well. But it's extremely heartfelt, and we hope it just continues on. And thank you for letting me say that today, Todd. Again, it means a lot to me as it does the others. But I just appreciate having the opportunity to speak and tell some of my memories off the top of my head.
Don, you're such a passionate and eloquent ambassador for McKeesport and for the memory and the heritage of the town. Lee Wagner, I want to tell everybody, Lee Wagner put a wonderful comment in the chat. Don is great. He helped me after my time in the Marines. He was the first person that I started working with when I wanted to begin helping other veterans. What a wonderful tribute to you, Don.
Thank
from
you.
Lee Wagner, who himself people will pay tribute to.
And ironically, Lee was the first person I met when I moved to Pittsburgh. He was the first meeting I took when I wanted to help other veterans when I moved to Pittsburgh. So the domino effect keeps going. Thanks, Don, and thank you, Lee. That's amazing.
The influence gets passed on. Don, two more things. I just want to let everybody know, I put a link to the book, to Do You Know That Boy, from Amazon link if people are interested in checking it out. One Town's Remembrance of the Vietnam War. And also, I want to put that phone number that you gave in the chat for everybody. What is your phone number again if people want to reach you?
Sure. It's my landline. I have a voicemail message I pick up all the time. It's 412-461-7172. I say again, 412-461-7172.
Excellent. Dom Nemchek, thank you so much for joining us. Carl Truss, Dave Moore, Bob Brown, thank you. Joe Hoffman. Wonderful guys for joining us today. And we'll see you tomorrow morning at our coffee hour and next week. All right. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.